He said, you can ask any child, they will tell you which procedure is better. I consider I'm middle-aged. I don't know which procedure is good. How can you even ask a child to tell us whether TAVR or a SAVR is better? Sarath here seemed to think that just because we can do a procedure, that becomes science, and we can recommend to everybody else. These four are more to give us an opportunity to be critical about what we do, look at the evidence dispassionately, and see what is best for the patient. All of you know, even in India, the longevity is going up. Our expected longevity today is 70 years, and it's fast increasing. You have a 40-year-old guy, you need to think 30 years ahead before you advise what procedure that person deserves to give best quality of life, not only disease-free, but best quality of life and longevity. I'm not sure that we should fight with each other whether PCI is right or surgery is right. We have to talk together and say this is the best for this person with the evidence that is available on that day. It could change in 5 years, that's fine. That's okay, we're all open to that. Everybody talks about heart team. Why was there so much hue and cry about Excel's results, and they were fighting and squabble in BBC? If we are together, we could have sat down behind the doors in the offices and could have found a solution before New England Journal took it upon itself to publish an Excel study and Partner 3, which is a real shame because the surgeon was the first author for that Partner 3 trial. So please, I'm a protagonist here. I'm sorry to say that, I'm in the wrong place to talk about this. But I feel it's the right place because all of you are my friends, and we're all together trying to address best interests of the patient. So I was asked to talk about what's called noble study for LMCA disease. So I want to say that scientific pursuit, not ad hoc cases. Scientific pursuit should be to identify and offer the best choice of therapy for an individual patient, which will not only address the relief of symptoms, but ensures best quality of life and longevity. This has to be our motto. It is not about one-upmanship, whether surgeon is right or a physician is right. The facts of LMCA is that only 4 to 6% of all the angiograms show some kind of LMCA disease. And it's only about 33% are between the ostium and shaft. Majority of left mainstem disease is affecting the bifurcation, distal LMCA with bifurcation disease. That's 70%, close to 70% of these patients. These are facts. These are published in the literature. I'm not talking anything from my fancy ideas. Now, if you look at the scenario within the left mainstem disease, is only 20% who are isolated, which are isolated. 80% to 85% are all associated with multi-vessel disease, either 1, 2, 3 vessel disease. So these are all facts, and when we talk about recommending a procedure, whether it is CABG or PCI, we need to take these facts into account. And it is not just a simple thing. We don't even see left main here. The entire left main is blocked. And in this, you have shaft disease, but multi-vessel disease. You can see RCA filling retrogradely here. And you can see this is a very eccentric 99% LMCA disease. And this has very complex trifurcation disease along with distal LMCA. So these are day-to-day facts. So we have to address each and every problem, and it cannot be done with a single procedure. These are all, Sarath already showed all these studies along with the multi-center studies, plus meta-analysis, which are 6 of them. And by the way, one of the the meta-analysis that he showed, one of the author is on Medtronic salary. He's a surgeon, but he's on a salary from Medtronic, and Abbott, which is now pushing for the current stents and also the trials. The Noble trial, basically, which is a Nordic Baltic British trial, is a 36 centers, multi-center trial, mainly done in Europe, randomized. It took 6 years to recruit 1,200 patients. It's a non-inferiority trial. Now, if you say, look at this, the screening process, about the 5 centers, 5 centers has actually done registry also, screening, and when they screened 982 patients, only 400 and odd patients were excluded, which means close to 50% of the patients are not suitable for a trial. Only 50% were selected for the trial. And if you look at the rest of the centers, the 31 centers did not even maintain a registry, so we don't know how many were not into the study. You can it is safe to assume, based on what we show in the registry here, that 50% are not suitable for randomized study, which indicates that all comers cannot be offered either or. It has to be individualized. And of course, this is the flow of patients over 5 years. These are the primary endpoints: composite major complications, all-cause mortality, non-procedural myocardial MI. This is the difference between Noble and the Excel. Excel took into account the peri-procedural MI, whereas Noble did not take that into account. He also mentioned that peri-procedural MI is high in CABG. I will address that. And he said, which is expected. I don't understand that statement. Are we expecting more MIs, peri-procedures in CABG? I've been in the business for 25 years, and I don't believe that. Neither publications showed that nor personal experience. I don't know whether that is true. So the results were reported recently. Secondary endpoints, these are not powered to prove non-inferiority. These are only secondary endpoints, as an observational endpoints. And the other issue is that both arms, it is the mean age is 66, and in Excel it is 63. So you need to, as I said, if you have an expectation of life of something like 80 years, you need to think about next 25 years of that patient. So it is very important to address that. Now you can see very clearly that the all-cause mortality is non-inferior with PCI, but all major adverse events, definitely PCI is inferior. You can see the p-value is very significant, and the numbers are very high. I'm sorry, I'm going to overrun for 1 or 2 minutes, chairpersons. And if you look at the non-procedural MIs, again, PCI scores worse. Repeat risk, this is in the background of, if your patient needs repeat revascularization, which is higher with PCI, repeat revascularizations, according to syntax score, they do worse. They fare worse in the long term if they have repeat revascularizations. So the stroke, although high with CABG, which is as expected, it has not reached a significance. In fact, in Excel study, the stroke is almost equal with PCI. It's not higher. This is the important slide. If you look at this slide in Noble study, they found MACE, major cardiovascular events, are much higher in low syntax score group. It's very, very significant, and it is unexpected, because so far Excel clearly says that low and intermediate score syntax, the the PCI fares better, which is obviously not the case with Noble. Intermediate and high syntax score, not enough power in the number of patients to prove, disprove, but the fact is that they have actually cut off and took off the high risk, high syntax score groups. So this is again MACE, non-procedural myocardial infarctions, and total repeat revascularizations. All these things are much higher in PCI. So I'm not sure if I can recommend this to my patients. So they finally concluded that PCI was associated with inferior 5-year clinical outcomes compared to CABG. Patients treated by PCI had higher rates of non-procedural MI and repeat revascularization. And according to syntax trial, repeat revascularization is associated with much higher bad outcomes. And if you look at Excel, which has already been shown very clearly, the PCI and comparable, I'm only going to address this peri-procedural MI. It showed either it is equal or slightly high. CABG has a peri-procedural MI. The reason for that, and the debate went on, is because of the Greg Stone has chosen a definition deliberately to show CABG will have much higher MIs, because he chose biochemical marker CKMB as opposed to troponin as an indicator for MI, which I'll show you in a minute. The rest is all same. Now, if you look at the importance of definition of MI, the secondary universal, third universal definitions by these groups, 2000 and 2007, shows very clearly, based on the definition that you use, either the PCI's MIs are much higher or about the same. But this guy is very clever. Greg Stone, who's the main author of the Excel, is so clever that he published in 2013 a SCAI definition of universal myocardial MI as CKMB. He published that before he started Excel study, so that he has a publication to show. So if you use CKMB as opposed to troponin, then your myocardial infarction for CABG is going to shoot up. And that's what balanced Excel outcomes as peri-procedural MIs are equal, if not high, in CABG. So the importance of definition, this is also published by cardiologists, not me, not surgeons. In an analysis using the universal definition and 10-year follow-up with troponin for the diagnosis of MI, significantly related to long-term mortality. Troponin has a much more sensitivity and specificity as opposed to CKMB. And strict systematic implementation of universal definition of MI, with emphasis on the importance of a stable or falling troponin baseline, will enhance specificity. If you don't use troponin and use whatever you like, just like partner 3, people don't want to use paravalvular leaks, complete heart blocks. They want to exclude all that and say aortic valve in low risk groups, TAVR is better, which is in my view is not right. We're doing a great disservice to our own patients. So this is the 5 years death, which is that's anyway. So the Excel Noble comparison, PCI non-inferior in Excel because of the chosen definitions for MI. And according to Noble, PCI is inferior to CABG. And somebody, Sarath pointed out the main compare. The real guy, the DW Park and the other park, showed in 2008, at 5 years, this is a registry with a propensity matched outcomes. At 5 years, he was very confident a large randomized trial is required to get more confidence in the long-term safety and durability of PCI, because he was already convinced PCI is good. But today, after 10 years follow-up of the same patients, he's not sure, because he found CABG and PCI are diverging after 5 years in terms of complications, in terms of death and longevity. Both curves in favor of CABG, they are diverging. So he's not sure today. And again, guidelines were shown by Sarath. Based on the evidences I've shown, which are dubious, European Cardiological Society and the CT Society has brought class 1A indication for PCI and CABG in patients with low anatomical complexity, and 2A and 3A for intermediate and high complexity syntax score. But as of now, in the last 6 months, EACTS has withdrawn support to these guidelines pending re-analysis and more research. So the implications are that revascularization can be performed with similar mortality by PCI or CABG. Well, presence of multivessel disease, particularly in combination with diabetes, should favor CABG. Patients eligible for both need to be well informed, and I am currently questioning that. Among the scientists sitting here, I'm questioning whether we're giving a balanced viewpoint. PCI might be in favor of, for coronary syndromes. I doubt very much, because in the Nobel study, that is not powered to test that, so we can't make that as a recommendation. Herman Howard from Penn State wrote this: in the absence of clear, this guy is an interventional professor at Penn State University. In the absence of clear and consistent data, long-term outcomes with CABG are superior for more complex anatomical left mainstem disease. PCI is preferred for patients with more non-cardiac comorbidity. The best, so that they don't have complications now or later. I don't know why he recommends those things. My concerns are there is an ongoing, consistent potential selection bias that need to be addressed by this group. Defining and including clinical relevant endpoints are very important. Definition is very important with the existing data, not our fancy definitions. Extensive statistical adjustments can be done to show what you want to show. So the statistics should be done blinded by statisticians, not physicians influencing statisticians. So in conclusion, I believe in revascularization of left main artery, as on today, PCI was associated with inferior results, either 5 years or longer. This issue need to further debated and studied unbiased, and identify the best groups for PCI and best groups for CABG. True camaraderie between cardiologists and CT surgeons should ensure unbiased research and best care for the patient. Thank you for the opportunity.